Hello everyone and welcome to our special coverage on the 110th anniversary of the Revolution of 1911, also known as the Xinhai Revolution. I'm Zhongshi live in Beijing. The Revolution of 1911 overthrew China's last imperial dynasty and ushered in the advent of modern China. Sun Yat-sen, a doctor from Guangdong province and the forerunner of the revolution, was the first to call for the revitalization of the Chinese nation. 110 years later, what China has achieved surpasses Sun's grand blueprint for the nation. Chinese President Xi Jinping will deliver a speech at a commemorative event, which begins at 10 o'clock Beijing time, that's 0200 GMT. We'll carry his remarks live in this special coverage. And for a comprehensive understanding of the significance of the Revolution of 1911, joining me here in the studio, Wang Xingsong, Associate Professor at the School of Social Development and Public Policy at Beijing Normal University, and current affairs commentator Einar Tangen. The Revolution of 1911 came after decades of foreign invasion, war, and stagnation had brought China on the verge of collapse. Our next report looks at some of those events.
In the early 19th century, Imperial China was in self-isolation, where trade with other countries was either prohibited or limited to certain places. Unable to get easy and cheap access to China's lucrative market, Britain sold opium there to ease its balance of payments. When the Qing government resisted, Britain attacked, sparking what became known as the First Opium War. It was a disaster for China. The Qing government was forced to open more trade ports and cede the island of Hong Kong to Britain. Worse was to come. In 1856, a military alliance of France and Britain, backed by the US and Tsarist Russia, once again moved their forces against China. It was known as the Second Opium War. The Qing dynasty was forced to sign even more unequal treaties, giving territory and special privileges to the invaders. The late 19th century saw an industrial revolution sweeping across countries like Britain, France, the US, and also Japan. China, however, which remained isolationist and heavily reliant on agriculture, was being left behind. This encouraged these countries to squeeze China, and further conflicts brought them more concessions. Japan was also becoming a growing military and industrial power, and it too turned its eye to China, launching what is now known as the First Sino-Japanese War. The following treaty forced the Qing to give Taiwan Island away. That was not the end. The Boxer Rebellion challenged their interests in China, and the Eight-Nation Alliance waged another war against the already collapsing China. A humiliating treaty was signed, known as the Boxer Protocol. Along with decades of foreign invasions, the Qing dynasty had also been struggling domestically. In an effort to compensate for these losses to the West, rulers levied heavier taxes on ordinary people, causing tremendous hardship. A host of rebellions, largest of which was called the Taiping, brought massive upheaval and chaos. The government was forced to start thinking very seriously about modernization. They carried out a strategic campaign of self-strengthening, which looked to make advancements in virtually all sectors. But as the West stepped up its aggression, fear was growing among many Chinese that the country was about to be carved up like a melon. A vigorous group called the Boxers mobilized hundreds of thousands of people to fight against the foreign forces. But a sense remained that China could never make the necessary improvements unless the imperial government was overthrown. Nationalist sentiment grew even stronger, with many revolutionaries favoring a Western-style republic over imperial rule. Rebellions were frequent until the Revolution of 1911 proved to be the decisive one.
Well, as you heard, the Revolution of 1911 ended the imperial rule in China and spread the ideas of democracy and equality in the minds of the Chinese. Let's now take a quick look at how this chapter of history unfolded.
After multiple defeats in wars against foreign forces since the First Opium War, the Qing dynasty's grip on power was weakening, as various movements in the country saw the end of imperial rule. One of these movements was driven by a young revolutionary named Sun Yat-sen. In 1905, he founded the Tongmenghui, or the United League, with the aim of ousting the emperor and founding a republic. On 10 October 1911, members of United League fired their weapons against the Qing military in Wuchang, a city in central China. They eventually took the whole city and chose a temporary leader. This armed rebellion, known as Wuchang Uprising, marks the beginning of the Xinhai Revolution. By the 2nd of December, the revolutionary forces had captured Nanjing and made it the site for their provisional government. 4 weeks later, Sun was elected as the first provisional president. At that time, Beijing was still the capital of the Qing government. In order to overthrow the Qing dynasty, revolutionists turned to negotiate with Yuan Shikai, who controlled the new army, which were the dynasty's forces trained and equipped in Western style. Sun promised Yuan he would become president if he persuaded the emperor to step down. On February 12, 1912, China's last emperor Pu Yi and Empress Dowager Longyu agreed to abdicate following the pressure from Yuan. By then, the last imperial dynasty of China had faded into history.
For more insights, I'm now joined in the studio by our panel today, Wang Xingsong, Associate Professor at the School of Social Development and Public Policy at Beijing Normal University, Current Affairs Commentator Einar Tangen. Gentlemen, welcome to our program today. Professor Wang, I do want to start with you because the revolution of 1911 signified what's been called an end to an old era of China. Now that we are commemorating this anniversary, when you look back at the past 110 years, what would you say was the role of the revolution in Chinese history?
Well, the revolution of 1911 is one of the greatest, in human history. And if you think about the Chinese history that ran for over 2,000 years, we had the same imperial and feudal system that lasted for 2,000 years. And we did have a lot of dynasties, but dynasties had come and gone. But it was the Qing dynasty that eventually collapsed as a result of the revolution of 1911. So from that perspective, the revolution really set up a new chapter in the entire Chinese history. And not only that, in the final decades of Qing rule, the Chinese society was suffering from a lot of problems domestically and externally. Domestically, China, the Chinese authority over that period of time suffered from rebellions, corruption in the bureaucracy, incapability of the bureaucrats, and so on and so forth. Externally, China was being invaded by quite a few foreign powers, and I would just say it was a humiliation under the Qing court rule. So that's why there were many social and political elites back then who were calling for reforms or revolutions. But we had a lot of reforms, but they didn't succeed, or they were too late. Eventually, revolution seemed to be the only way to go, and it was Dr. Sun Yat-sen and his movement, in collaboration with other groups and movements, that eventually ignited the revolution of 1911. So in that sense, the revolution was also important in changing the trajectory of the Chinese development at the turn of the 20th century. The revolution was also a combination of the decades of reforms and policies changes. It also ignited new changes. For example, economically, it set up a new stage for the development of native industry. And intellectually, it set free the minds of people, who used to surround the Chinese old civilization and family clan values. But now, something called nationalism became very prevalent in the Chinese society. And this idea of self-determination, which originated from Europe, also floated to China and became popular. So the Chinese people eventually found themselves surrounding a Chinese national identity rather than surrounding just around their family and clan values. So in that sense, the revolution is also very critical.
Either the revolution of 1911 might have been a culmination, as Professor Wang pointed out, but there were a series of revolts and uprisings leading up to the 1911 revolution that failed. So how do you reflect on the revolution?
Well, I agree with my colleague, Dr. Wang. I mean, what you have here is a crisis in government. The Qing Empire had been unable to answer the challenges of the new age. And remember, part of it was economic, trying to, the issue was tea. The British developed a taste for it, and all the silver flowed to the east, and then they decided that they needed to get their silver back, so they introduced opium, and when China wouldn't go along willingly, they decided that they were going to do it by force. So, what's interesting about it is that history doesn't repeat, but it does rhyme. So when you start looking at, there are a lot of specters today. You heard about Hong Kong being taken. You talked about Taiwan being taken. These are all around this type of period. And why? Because China had become, as you pointed out, very, very weak under an anachronistic, feudal system that wasn't able to answer it. So all of these other things are kind of like shock waves. They were signaling that no longer were the people of China willing to be carved up, humiliated, that they were going to rise together and prevent their country from being further sliced and diced by foreign powers. So, it was I agree with you, the previous dynasties had really just been the same idea, different person, okay? And they had generally happened during times of weakness. This is really the first time in China that you have an idea that people should have a say and that there should be a national identity.
Gentlemen, I'll be back with you in a few moments. But for now, I do want to take our viewers straight to the venue of the commemoration today, to the Great Hall of the People, where CGTN reporter Su Yuting is live with us. Yuting, what can we expect from the event today?
Well, Zhongshi, I'm now standing at the Great Hall of the People in Beijing. Senior officials and representatives from all across China will gather here to remember a very important chapter in the country's history. And President Xi Jinping will deliver a very important speech at this commemorative event. As you can see behind me, from 1911 to 2021, this year marks the 110th anniversary of the revolution of the 1911. And that has brought to an end to more than 2,000 years of imperial rule in China. And the revolution has also led to the establishment of the Republic of China and also the consecutive social changes in the country. And you can also see behind me there is a very massive portrait of Sun Yat-sen, who is the forerunner of the China's democratic revolution, and he's also well known as the champion of national unity and integrity. This year also marks the 100th anniversary of the founding of the Communist Party of China. And you know that this historical juncture marks the commemoration of the revolution of 1911, particularly important for the Chinese people. President Xi Jinping has once emphasized that the Chinese CPC members are the strongest supporters and most faithful successors of Sun's revolutionary undertakings. I've also talked to some of the attendees of today's conference, and they said there are far-reaching implications of this event to learn from the revolutionaries' patriotism and also their devotion to the country and to the motherland. And they also said that it's very important to carry on the pursuit of the great rejuvenation of the Chinese nation. Back to you, Zhongshi.
Yuting, we appreciate that report from you from the Great Hall of the People, CGTN Su Yuting. Thank you so much. I do want to get back to my guests here in the studio. Professor Wang, I have one question for you about the constraints and limitations of the revolution of 1911. It failed to change a couple things. It didn't really change the social nature of China at the time, what we called semi-colonial and semi-feudal. It didn't exactly lift the Chinese people out of the economic, social, and political misery they found themselves in at the time, and it also didn't achieve independence. What would be your take on the limitations of the revolution of 1911?
Well, I think the Chinese problems have had accumulated so much to the extent that one would not expect one revolution to change everything. And so for all what the revolution had done to the Chinese political system and to the Chinese society, like you said, there are a few challenges during and after the revolution. Number one, I think the revolution was, I think it fell short of delivering what it was supposed to do. For example, achieving justice, equality, and social economic development. Chinese problems accumulated for decades, if not hundreds of years, during the Qing rule. So when the revolution happened, it really just gave people an opportunity to voice their concerns and opinions toward the Qing rule, and also give people the opportunity to change their lives. But it took a long-term governance and reform to really make the real changes. And also externally, the international forces were still in China, and Russia, France, Britain, and Japan, they all took over their respective territories over China. Japan extended the notorious 21 demands in 1915, and Japan also had a secret deal with France and Britain during the First World War to take over Shandong Peninsula after Germany would lose the war. So China was still facing a lot of external pressure and challenges, and the revolution itself would not be able to deliver all the changes and make all these reforms in just a time period of a few years.
I want to make sure the next question is directed at you, but for now, thank you so much. Sun Yat-sen is revered in China as a visionary and a leader who played a pivotal role in ending the country's imperial rule. A few years after the revolution of 1911, he moved to Shanghai in 1918. Here, he summarized the lessons from past revolutions and mass movements in his quest to modernize and unify China and repel foreign intervention. Sun spearheaded a brief period of cooperation between the Chinese Nationalist Party, known as the Kuomintang, and the Communist Party of China. CGTN reporter Gao Wang joins me from the Shanghai Museum of Sun Yat-sen's former residence. Gao Wang, tell us more about where you are and the history the residence has witnessed.
Yes, Zhongshi, I'm now at the Sun Yat-sen's former residence here in Shanghai. As you can see behind me, this is the house where Dr. Sun and his wife Sun Qingling used to live during 1920s. So not only the house, but also the city of Shanghai was a very critical place during the revolution of 1911. Back then, revolutionaries gathered here and published magazines and also newspapers to spread out their thoughts on democracy and nationalism. But before getting into more details about the house, let's first take a quick review of Dr. Sun's life. Revolution, democracy, and patriotism. These are among the keywords leading the life of Sun Yat-sen. Born in Guangdong province in 1866, Sun started his career as a doctor in Macau and Guangzhou.
During his practice, Sun realized that medical techniques can only heal people's physical pain, but cannot awaken their soul. So he began to work on a more important thing, that is to save the country.
Sun then established revolutionary organizations like the Tongmenghui, the aim to promote nationalism, democracy, and people's livelihood. In 1911, Sun led the Xinhai Revolution, putting an end to the Chinese monarchy of more than 2,000 years old. Over his long career as a revolutionary, Sun sketched out many plans for how a government should develop its economy, from ports, railways, to industry. Besides political activities, Sun also developed plans to promote more than 30 industries, such as mining, agriculture, and transportation. Sun faced many challenges in the early 1920s, but he eventually joined hands with the Communist Party of China to help the country prosper.
Now, Dr. Sun's industrial plan has not only been realized, but it has far exceeded his original vision. As President Xi said, what can comfort Dr. Sun today is that we're closer to achieve the goal of national rejuvenation than ever before.
The revolution has not yet been successful, and comrades still need to strive for it. Sun's famous quote has encouraged generations to carry forward the revolution. And even today, people remember his patriotism and devotion to the motherland.
Yes, now I'm joined by Ms. Qing Li. She's the explainer here at Sun Yat-sen's former residence here in Shanghai. So, Mr., thank you so much for joining us on our show. So I wonder what kind of role Dr. Sun played in Chinese history, especially in terms of, putting forward the revolution and also promoting nationalism and democracy.
Sun Yat-sen is a great forerunner of the China's democratic revolution. He led the revolution of 1911, overthrew the monarchy, and established the first Republic of China. The house was donated by overseas Chinese in Canada who supported Dr. Sun's revolutionary activities. Dr. Sun and his wife, Madame Song Qingling, lived here from 1918 to 1924. Although the house is not very big, it witnessed many important historical events. It was here Dr. Sun wrote the two famous books, The Doctrine of Sun Wen and The International Development of China. It was also here that he met Li Dazhao, one of the leaders of Communist Party of China. Although the house is not big, so as Song Qingling once said, as a very important historical monument, the house will be remembered by all the Chinese people.
Thank you so much. So this is Ms. Qing Li, the explainer here at the Sun Yat-sen's former residence here in Shanghai. And that's all from us. Back to you, Zhongshi.
CGTN's Gao Ang in Shanghai today. Gao Ang, thank you. Appreciate that. The legacy of Sun Yat-sen has been cherished by people on both sides of the Taiwan Strait. Taiwan is also holding commemorative events to mark the 110th anniversary of the Revolution of 1911. For more details, let's check in with our guest reporter Andy Lee in Taipei. Andy, good morning to you. Tell us more about the events there.
Yes, good morning, Zhongshi. Now, the people on the island of Taiwan, as of today and of tomorrow, will be holding events to commemorate this revolution of 1911, a very important historic event for all the Chinese people on both sides of the strait. Now, in Taipei City, it will be held by the Sun Yat-sen Foundation at the location of Sun Yat-sen Memorial Hall. It will be a conference to discuss the impact of this revolution of 1911 for all of Chinese people and what it means to the world as a whole. Now, in addition, a new book about the life of Sun Yat-sen and his wife, Madame Song Qingling, will be released as of tomorrow on October the 10th as well. Now, in addition, some research I did tells me that a couple of days ago, in both sides of Taiwan Strait, in Chinese mainland and in the island of Taiwan, a conference, both on-site and online, was held. One on the side of Changsha City in Hunan Province, one in Taipei, also to commemorate this revolution of 1911. Now, those who attended this conference held on September 23rd, just a few days ago, were descendants of the martyrs of the revolution of 1911, and of course, scholars and experts discussing the importance, the meaning of this revolution of 1911. So yes, the people in Taiwan do commemorate Dr. Sun Yat-sen. And of course, we all know that this is an important event, revolution of 1911, which eventually led to the establishment of the People's Republic of China, which brought about a big and bright future to all of Chinese people, not only in Chinese mainland, but also on the island of Taiwan and the whole wide world as well. Back to you, Zhongshi. This is Andy Lee for CGTN in Taiwan, China.
Andy, thank you so much for that report. Let's continue our discussion with my studio guests here. Einar, this one is for you. Let's talk about Sun Yat-sen. History is often changed and moved by key figures. He was a key figure in the 1911 revolution. How would you assess his character and his role at the time?
Well, he was pivotal. He was sincere. He really saw the ills of China, and he realized that they had to change. But in his thinking, it was all about nationalism and democracy, and that these would be the elements that could usher in a new China. But he was up against a tremendous amount of feudal legacy. I mean, the illiteracy. People hadn't been given an opportunity to learn. There was still famine, depending on natural circumstances and things like that. China had fallen behind in terms of industrialization. So he kind of was going in the right direction, but it was to remain to be the founding of the Republic of China before many of his ideas could actually be implemented.
Professor Wang, your take on Sun Yat-sen?
Well, I think he has a few traits that you will see in many great leaders in human history. He was a philosopher. He had this political philosophy of the three principles of the people, and he was a great leader in terms of managing a series of movements. And one needs to note that by 1911, he already led at least 10 uprisings. Depending on a series of organizations he founded and other organizations he allied with. And he was also a very good fundraiser. He went around the world, literally, in Southeast Asia, including Singapore, Malaysia, Thailand, and he went to Europe. He was in the States doing fundraising work to support the movements and revolution. And he was also a very great orator. He gave speeches, he wrote articles and published on the newspapers he himself made available. So in all respects, he was a great leader. At the same time, he was very perseverant. The revolution didn't come easily. He failed in all these previous movements and uprisings, but eventually it was the 1911 revolution that succeeded in overthrowing the imperial rule, and he had a great role in that revolution. At the same time, also, I think he had great idea about how China and where China was going. He realized that the Chinese society needed a great transformation, but the Chinese society needed a political party, a political organization that can really put together the scattered forces. And note that China was in warlordism after the Great Revolution for at least 10 years. So Sun Yat-sen had this idea that we needed a strong political organization to tramp over all these warlords, at the same time to put together the social forces for a continued revolution, for a new system.
I do want to talk to you both about this year. This year, 2021, has been a year of great anniversaries. We've had the 100th anniversary of the founding of the Communist Party of China. We are today commemorating the 110th anniversary of the Revolution of 1911. Professor Wang, why are these events, these commemorations, important for the Chinese people?
Well, it is very important because all the historical events were well connected. The Communist Party of China was founded 10 years after the 1911 revolution, and Sun Yat-sen's unfinished cause in the Great Revolution was continued by the Communist Party of China, which led China into a great success if we look at all these developments today. And in terms of the political system, the Communist Party led China into a socialist democracy where people had the rights claimed by Sun Yat-sen that they should have in participating in the political system. Economically, the Communist Party made all these successful policies to change China from a economy from ground zero to where we are today, and that was also a dream in one of the three principles of the people claimed by Dr. Sun Yat-sen. So I think what the Communist Party did after its founding to lead another communist revolution, to lead another great transformation of the Chinese society, finished what Dr. Sun Yat-sen was unable to finish during the Great Revolution.
Yeah, we are monitoring live pictures from inside the Great Hall of the People, where commemoration will start in a few moments. I do believe we have a little bit of time. Einar, you want to also talk about the importance of commemorating these events?
Well, absolutely, especially at these times. I mean, back then, Sun Yat-sen realized there were great disparities, but he didn't know how to go about tackling them. How do you modernize China at the same time as distributing the wealth and things like that? And so it was very, very difficult. He adhered to a lot of the principles that he had absorbed from the West, but they really weren't applicable to China because of the very, very differential nature of things. So when we start talking about these events, as I said, history is not dead. It is simply changed. And a lot of the same issues, gunboat diplomacy, neocolonialism, disparities, the need for change are still there.
All right. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for your insights. We'll continue our conversation in a few moments. But for now, we do want to take our viewers straight to the Great Hall of the People in the center of Beijing. The commemorative event to mark the 110th anniversary of the Revolution of 1911 is about to begin at the Great Hall of the People in the Chinese capital. Chinese President and General Secretary of the Communist Party of China Central Committee, Xi Jinping, will soon deliver a speech. The chairman of the Chinese People's Political Consultative Conference, Wang Yang, presides over the commemoration. We now take you live to the event. If you're just joining us here on CGTN, these are live pictures from inside the Great Hall of the People, where commemoration to mark 110th anniversary of the Revolution of 1911 is just starting.
Distinguished guests, comrades, friends, the meeting to commemorate the 110th anniversary of the 1911 revolution now begins. Please all rise and sing the national anthem of the People's Republic of China. Please be seated. The leading comrades present today are General Secretary of the Communist Party of China Central Committee, Chinese President and Chairman of the Central Military Commission, Comrade Xi Jinping. Members of the Standing Committee of the Political Bureau of the CPC Central Committee, Li Keqiang, Li Zhanshu, Wang Huning, Zhao Leji, and Han Zheng, and Vice Premier Wang Qishan. Also present at the meeting, party and state leaders in Beijing, members of the Central Military Commission, comrades from party, government, military, and public institutions, and the key responsible personnel of these departments in Beijing, representatives from the Central Committee of the Democratic Parties and the National Federation of Industry and Commerce, and a personage with no party affiliation, members of the NPC Standing Committee in Beijing and some NPC deputies, the Standing Committee of the CPPCC National Committee in Beijing and a part of the members, representatives on behalf of ethnic, religious, and social groups, some diplomatic envoys to China, the descendants of the pioneers of the 1911 revolution invited to the meeting, representatives from Hong Kong, Macau, and Taiwan, and overseas guests, officers and soldiers of the People's Liberation Army and Armed Police Force, and people from all walks of life in Beijing. Now, I would like to invite Vice Chairman of the Standing Committee of the National People's Congress and Chairman of the Central Committee of the Revolutionary Committee of the Chinese Kuomintang, Comrade Wang Exiang, to deliver a speech.
Comrades and friends, today we gather here to mark the 110th anniversary of the Revolution of 1911, to cherish the memory of the outstanding exploits of Dr. Sun Yat-sen and other revolutionary pioneers, to carry forward the precious spirit of this revolution, and to reaffirm the shared aspiration of all the sons and daughters of the Chinese nation to achieve national rejuvenation and reunification. On behalf of the Revolutionary Committee of the Chinese Kuomintang, the China Democratic League, the China Democratic National Construction Association, and the China Association for Promoting Democracy, the Chinese Peasants and Workers Democratic Party, the China Zhigong Party, the Jiusan Society, the Taiwan Democratic Self-Government League, and the All China Federation of Industry and Commerce, I'd like to pay my highest tribute to the pioneers of the Revolution of 1911, and I'd like to extend sincere greetings to the descendants of these revolutionaries and to all our friends from home and abroad who have been invited to this commemoration. As one of the most important milestones on our journey toward national rejuvenation, the Revolution of 1911 has left an invaluable legacy to future generations. Through tenacious struggle, the revolutionary pioneers represented by Dr. Sun Yat-sen launched this revolution, putting an end to the absolute monarchy that had reigned over China for more than 2,000 years, ushering in a modern national democratic revolution in the truest sense, and helping spread the ideas of democracy and republicanism. Their tremendous power and profound influence helped to liberate the thinking of the Chinese people and bring about social changes in modern China, opening the floodgates for China's progress. The spirit of the Revolution of 1911, such as the patriotic spirit of revitalizing China, the revolutionary spirit of never yielding to power, the democratic spirit of opposing autocracy, the heroic spirit of sacrificing one's life for a noble cause, the tenacious spirit of soldiering on despite setbacks, and the collaborative spirit of keeping the big picture in mind, has inspired generation after generation of noble-minded patriots to lead the people in forging ahead in the face of hardship and peril. Since the Revolution of 1911, history has shown that only the Communist Party of China can lead the Chinese people in taking on the great task of national salvation and rejuvenation. Constrained by the historical and social conditions of the time, the Revolution of 1911 could not change the semi-colonial and semi-feudal nature of Chinese society, nor could it accomplish the historic missions of national independence and the people's liberation. The CPC has made exceptional achievements over the 100 years since its founding. It united and led the Chinese people through an arduous and bitter struggle, toppling the three mountains of imperialism, feudalism, and bureaucrat capitalism to secure our nation's independence, liberate our people, and establish the People's Republic of China. It has led the people in establishing and improving the system of socialism with Chinese characteristics, safeguarding to the greatest extent more than 1.4 billion people's fundamental rights and interests, including their rights to life, health, and development, as well as their political rights. It has always put the people first and has been committed to the reform and opening up policy and to pursuing prosperity for all. It has led the Chinese people in creating a miracle of rapid economic development and long-term social stability of a kind rarely seen in the world. And it has successfully built China into a moderately prosperous society in all respects. In today's China, under the firm leadership of the CPC and through the tireless efforts of the Chinese people, our nation is prosperous and strong. Our ethnic groups are advancing in unity. Our people are running their own country, and our living standards are growing ever better. Step by step, the cherished aspirations of Dr. Sun Yat-sen and their pioneers of the Revolution of 1911 have all become or are becoming reality. And the Chinese people are advancing with unstoppable momentum toward the great goal of national rejuvenation. All democratic parties and the All China Federation of Industry and Commerce have experienced, implemented, upheld, and defended socialism with Chinese characteristics. We've participated in and witnessed the tremendous transformation of the Chinese nation, from the time of its standing up and growing prosperous to the time of its becoming strong. Our experience has made us keenly aware that only the CPC can lead China, that only socialism can save China, and that only socialism with Chinese characteristics can develop China and realize the Chinese dream of national rejuvenation. As China reaches the historical convergence of the two centenary goals, we'll embark on a new journey, rally more closely around the CPC Central Committee with Comrade Xi Jinping at its core, and continue to play our roles as good advisors, aides, and colleagues to the CPC. In this way, we will make our contribution to the improvement and development of socialism with Chinese characteristics in the new era and to the early establishment of China as a modern socialist country that is prosperous, strong, democratic, culturally advanced, harmonious, and beautiful. We, the sons and daughters of the Chinese nation, should strive to realize national reunification, the unfinished cause of the pioneers of the revolution, at the earliest opportunity. Today, as we cherish the memory of Dr. Sun Yat-sen and the other pioneers of the revolution, it is even more important that we keep in mind their firm conviction in opposing the separation of our country and safeguarding territorial integrity, as well as their unremitting efforts to remove obstacles and promote reunification. Achieving China's complete reunification serves the fundamental interests of the Chinese nation. It is the aspiration shared by all Chinese people, and most importantly, it is a goal that countless pioneers, martyrs, and forebears have spent their lives fighting for since the Revolution of 1911. As we face momentous changes, the likes of which the world has not seen in a century, it is our sincere hope that all of us, compatriots on both sides of the Taiwan Strait, will give top priority to the fundamental interests of our country and nation and to the big picture of the rejuvenation strategy of the Chinese nation, working together to oppose separatist elements advocating Taiwan independence in order to realize China's complete reunification as early as possible. Together, we, the Chinese nation, will march toward a more splendid tomorrow. Thank you.
Now, I would like to invite Chairman of the All China Federation of Returned Overseas Chinese, Comrade Wan Lijun, to deliver a speech. Comrades and friends, today our hearts are filled with reverence as we gather on this solemn occasion to commemorate the 110th anniversary of the Revolution of 1911. On behalf of the country's people's organizations, I wish to express our heartfelt remembrance of and pay sincere tribute to Dr. Sun Yat-sen, the great forerunner of the democratic revolution, who led the revolution of 1911, and the revolutionary martyrs who heroically laid down their life to overthrow the monarchic system and found a republic in China. As it entered the modern time, bullied by foreign powers and beset by domestic corruption, the Chinese nation was in grave crisis. Saving the nation and ensuring its survival thus became the call of the times. 110 years ago, the revolution of 1911 erupted and toppled the Qing dynasty, ending more than 2,000 years of federal autocracy in China and opening the floodgates for China's advancement. Thus, in 1921, the Communist Party of China was born, ushering in a new epoch in Chinese history. Over the past 100 years, the CPC has united and led the Chinese people through tenacious struggle, making miraculous historical achievements one after another. Today, a vibrant China has emerged in the East, and the Chinese nation is closer than ever before to making the goal of national rejuvenation a reality. History shows that the CPC is the central pillar of the rejuvenation of the Chinese nation. At the path of socialism with Chinese characteristics is the correct path for China's development and progress. We must unswervingly uphold the leadership of the CPC and follow the path of socialism with Chinese characteristics. Since its founding, the CPC has carried on the work of the pioneers of the Revolution of 1911. It founded the People's Republic of China, where the people are the masters of their own country, and blazed the path of socialism with Chinese characteristics, thus writing the most magnificent chapter in the millennia-long history of the Chinese nation. Past experience has proven that without the Communist Party, there would have been no new China, that only socialism can save China and enable China to develop, and that the CPC is the leadership core for the cause of socialism with Chinese characteristics. On the journey ahead, we must unswervingly uphold the leadership of the CPC and follow the guidance of Xi Jinping's thought on socialism with Chinese characteristics for a new era. We must better maintain political integrity, think in big picture terms, follow the leadership core, and keep in alignment with the central party leadership. We must stay confident in the past theory, system, and the culture of socialism with Chinese characteristics. We must uphold the core position of the General Secretary Xi Jinping on the Party Central Committee and in the party as a whole. History shows that the rejuvenation of the Chinese nation has been our greatest dream since the advent of the modern era. To make this dream come true, we must promote the spirit of patriotism and strengthen unity and solidarity between Chinese people at home and abroad. Dr. Sun Yat-sen once again said that the overseas Chinese are the mother of the revolution. During the revolution of 1911, overseas Chinese supported revolutionary pioneers in spreading ideas in established organizations, and they actively participated in uprisings. Since the founding of the People's Republic of China, Chinese nationals residing abroad, returned overseas Chinese, and the relatives of overseas Chinese nationals residing in China have always shared the same prize and fate with the motherland, making important contributions to China's revolution, development, and reform. On the journey ahead, we must hold high the banner of patriotism, fully implement the CPC policies on overseas Chinese, affairs and give full play to the unique strengths of the Chinese nationals residing abroad, returned overseas Chinese and overseas Chinese nationals residing in China, so that all Chinese can focus on their ingenuity and energy on the same goal and come together as a mighty force to create a better future of national rejuvenation. History shows that the people's endorsement and support is the source of strength that ensure the success of our cause. We must give play to the role of a people's organization in uniting the people that they are associated with and seeing that they rally closely around the CPC. One of the important reasons that the CPC has been able to ceaselessly realize and advance the unfinished work of the revolution of 1911 is that it has always put the people first, closely relied on the people and worked to benefit the people. People's organization have the important task of organizing, mobilizing, guiding, and serving the people. They served as the bridges that link the party and government with the people. On the journey ahead, we must work to see that the people's organizations faithfully perform their functions so that they strengthen their political character, pioneering nature, and connection with the people, and that they deal with issues related to the people thoroughly and meticulously. History shows that resolving the Taiwan question and realizing China's complete unification is a shared aspiration of all the sons and daughters of the Chinese nation. Thus, we must unequivocally oppose separatist activities aimed at Taiwan independence and press ahead with the peaceful reunification of China. Achieving China's complete unification is the key element of the spirit of the Revolution of 1911, as well as the common aspiration of compatriots on both sides of the strait. No person, no force can stop the historic trend toward a stronger China, national rejuvenation, and cross-strait unification. On the journey ahead, we will uphold the One China principle and the 1992 consensus so as to build a broad consensus among all Chinese people, including our compatriots in Taiwan. We will strengthen and deepen people-to-people exchanges and promote the convergence of hearts and minds across the strait. In this way, we will rally all Chinese people at home and abroad to join us in completing the just cause of peaceful national rejuvenation. Comrades and friends, let us rally closely around the CPC Central Committee with Comrade Xi Jinping at its core and work concertedly with one heart and one mind for the Chinese dream of national rejuvenation. Now, please allow me to give the floor to General Secretary of the Communist Party of China Central Committee, Chinese President and Chairman of the Central Military Commission, Comrade Xi Jinping, to deliver an important speech.
Comrades and friends, 110 years ago, Chinese revolutionaries, represented by Dr. Sun Yat-sen, stunned the world when they launched the Revolution of 1911. They brought down the Qing government, ended the absolute monarchy that had ruled China for thousands of years, and paved the way for the profound social changes that have taken place in modern China. This was a great and arduous exploration undertaken by the Chinese people and the Chinese progressives in a bid to achieve national independence and the people's liberation. This year marks the 110th anniversary of the Revolution of 1911 and the centenary of the CPC, and the Chinese people are striding with confidence toward the second centenary goal of building China into a great modern socialist country in all respects. On this special occasion, we gather here to commemorate the historic exploits of the revolutionary pioneers like Dr. Sun Yat-sen, to emulate and carry forward their lofty spirit of working with unshakable resolve to revitalize China, and to inspire and rally the sons and daughters of the Chinese nation at home and abroad to work together to realize the rejuvenation of the Chinese nation. Comrades and friends, the Revolution of 1911, with its deep social and historical roots, was an inevitable product of the intensifying social conflicts and tenacious struggles of the Chinese people in modern China. Over more than 5,000 years of history, the great and ancient Chinese nation made indelible contributions to human civilization. But after the Opium War of 1840, Western powers came to act with impunity on Chinese lands, and feudal rulers were rendered weak and ineffectual. Gradually, China was reduced to a semi-colonial and semi-feudal society. With our country humiliated, our people subjected to great pain, and our civilization plunged into darkness, the Chinese people and the Chinese nation suffered greater ravages than ever before. The heroic Chinese people, however, did not admit defeat. They kept fighting and exploring new ways to save the nation. And they demonstrated an unbending will and defiance in the face of brutality. Since that time, national rejuvenation has been the greatest dream of the Chinese people. Dr. Sun Yat-sen was a great national hero, a great patriot, and a great pioneer of China's democratic revolution. He called out to save our people from misery and prop up our tottering country without delay. He held high the banner of struggle against feudal autocracy and put forward the political program based on the three people's principles of nationalism, democracy, and people's livelihood. And he was the first to call for the revitalization of China. Under his leadership and influence, large numbers of revolutionaries and countless dedicated patriots rallied under the banner of revitalizing China. They spread revolutionary ideas far and wide, unleashed the tide of progress, and launched a series of armed uprisings, generating an unstoppable wave of revolution. On October the 10th, 1911, Gunfire in Wuchang City sounded the start of a true national democratic revolution in modern China. The Revolution of 1911 helped to greatly liberate the thinking of the Chinese people, spread the ideas of democracy and republicanism, and opened the floodgates for progress in China. It shook the very foundations of reactionary rule and brought about the establishment of a republic on Chinese soil, the first of its kind in Asia, with tremendous power and profound influence. The Revolution of 1911 triggered a social transformation in China and led to the search for a path to national rejuvenation. The historic contributions to the Chinese nation of Dr. Sun Yat-sen and other pioneers of the revolution will never fade from the annals of history. Those who heroically fought and died in the revolution will be revered and remembered by the Chinese people for all time. The Revolution of 1911 will forever stand as a towering landmark on our nation's journey toward rejuvenation. Comrades and friends, history spirals upward, advancing in waves of progress. Constrained by the historical and social conditions of the time, and lacking the right path and leading force to determine the future of the country, the Revolution of 1911 could not change the semi-colonial and semi-feudal nature of the Chinese society. It could not alter the bitter fate of the Chinese people, and it could not accomplish the historic missions of national independence and the people's liberation. In the following years, however, the Chinese people and the progressives who were tempered in the heat of the revolution continued searching for a way to save the country and the people. With the salvos of Russia's October Revolution in 1917, Marxism-Leninism was brought to China, sparking a great awakening among the Chinese people. In the course of integrating Marxism-Leninism with the Chinese workers' movement, the Communist Party of China was born. On the day of its founding, the CPC made seeking happiness for the Chinese people and rejuvenation for the Chinese nation its aspiration and mission, thus lighting a beacon of hope for the cause of national rejuvenation. Chinese communists were the most steadfast supporters, loyal collaborators, and faithful successors to the revolutionary cause initiated by Dr. Sun Yat-sen. At its founding, the CPC proposed an anti-imperialist and anti-feudal program for democratic revolution, and worked together with the Chinese Kuomintang led by Dr. Sun. It helped the KMT to complete its reorganization and cooperated with it to establish the broadest possible revolutionary united front and to launch the Great Revolution, which dealt a severe blow to the reactionary rule of the northern warlords. After the death of Dr. Sun Yat-sen, Chinese communists remained true to his wishes and carried on the struggle with all those who were loyal to his cause, working continually to realize and build on the great aspirations of Dr. Sun and other pioneers of the Revolution of 1911. The CPC united the Chinese people and led them in waging a fierce struggle with unyielding determination to defeat reactionary forces both at home and abroad, secure victory in the new democratic revolution, and establish the People's Republic of China, which made the people the masters of the country. The Chinese communists and Chinese people thus accomplished the historic missions of national independence and the people's liberation, and ushered in a new era of development and progress for the Chinese nation. After the founding of the People's Republic, the CPC united and led the Chinese people in working to build a stronger China through a spirit of self-reliance, achieving great success in socialist revolution and construction. It led the people in freeing their minds and forging ahead to secure great success in reform, opening up, and socialist modernization. And it has led the people in pursuing a great struggle, a great project, a great cause, and a great dream through a spirit of self-confidence, self-reliance, and innovation on the basis of tradition, achieving great success in upholding and developing socialism with Chinese characteristics in the new era. Comparing the China of today with that of the past, we find that the aspiration of national revitalization that was deeply held by Dr. Sun Yat-sen, the longing for a bright future for the Chinese nation that was cherished by the pioneers of the revolution, and the great dream that the Chinese people have aspired and striven toward in modern times, have all become or are becoming reality. The Chinese nation has achieved a tremendous transformation from standing up and growing prosperous to becoming strong. And its national rejuvenation has become a historical inevitability.
Comrades and friends, in his Plans for National Reconstruction, Dr. Sun Yat-sen wrote, "If I believe something to be feasible, even it may be as difficult as moving a mountain or draining a sea, I will one day bring it to pass." Today, after many years of hard work, we possess stronger institutions, firmer material foundations, and a more proactive mindset for realizing national rejuvenation. The prospects are bright and broad, but the road ahead will not be all smooth sailing. We must draw on the lessons of our past in order to forge our future. On the new journey of building a modern socialist country in all respects, we will carry forward our historic mission and seize the historical initiative so as to keep driving the great cause of national rejuvenation forward. The past 110 years have shown us that to realize national rejuvenation, the Chinese people must have a strong force to lead us forward. And that force is the Communist Party of China. The party was chosen to lead by history and by the people. Its leadership is the very foundation of lifeblood of the party and the country, and it is the crux upon which the interests and well-being of all Chinese people depend. Without the Communist Party of China, there would be no new China and no national rejuvenation. On the journey ahead, we must uphold and strengthen the CPC's overall leadership. We will ensure that the party fulfills its core role of providing overarching leadership and coordinating efforts on all fronts. And we will ensure its capability to conduct sound, democratic, and law-based governance. We will champion the great founding spirit of the party, advance the great new project of party building, and strengthen the party's ability to purify, improve, and reform itself, so as to ensure it always firmly stands as the most reliable backbone of the Chinese nation and people. The past 110 years have shown us that to realize national rejuvenation, the path we take is of fundamental importance. Socialism with Chinese characteristics has proven to be the only correct path. This path accords with the realities of China, the will of the Chinese people, and the requirements of contemporary development. It is not only the right path for reaching our destination, it will also take us there with strong and sure strides. On the journey ahead, we must uphold and develop socialism with Chinese characteristics, keep adapting Marxism to the Chinese context and the needs of our times, remain firmly committed to our aspiration and our path, and make sure the future of China's development remains firmly in our own hands. We will ensure coordinated implementation of the five-sphered integrated plan and the four-pronged comprehensive strategy, deepen reform and opening up across the board, modernize China's system and capacity for governance, and work tirelessly to fulfill the people's aspirations for a better life and realize common prosperity for all. The past 110 years have shown us that to realize national rejuvenation, the Chinese people must rely on our own heroic efforts. Never has history taken a peaceful or tranquil course. It has always advanced amid setbacks and difficulties. But in the words of Mao Zedong, our forefathers never stopped waging unyielding struggles against domestic and foreign oppressors. By our own indomitable efforts, we, the Chinese people, will unswervingly reach our goal. On the journey ahead, we must remember that we are pursuing national rejuvenation in a world that is undergoing momentous changes of a kind never seen in a century. We must seize the opportunities that the era has offered to us. We must remain vigilant and be better prepared for adversity and maintain our revolutionary spirit and moral, and have the courage to carry out a great struggle with many new contemporary features. Through courage and skill, we will overcome all major risks and challenges that may impede our path to national rejuvenation, and resolutely safeguard our national sovereignty, security, and development interests. The past 110 years have shown us that to realize national rejuvenation, the Chinese people and nation must stick together through good times and bad, and rely on our strong unity to overcome all risks and challenges on the road ahead. Dr. Sun Yat-sen once said, "To restore our nation's standing, we must first restore our national spirit." Since the advent of modern times, the Chinese people and the nation have promoted a great spirit of patriotism and fought with one heart and mind. Together, they have accomplished the heroic feats of resisting foreign aggression, overthrowing reactionary rule, building a country of the people, and advancing reform and opening up. The United Front has always been an important instrument that has allowed the CPC to rally the people's support and pool their strengths for such endeavors. On the journey ahead, we must fully promote patriotism, foster a strong sense of national dignity and confidence among our people, and strengthen the Chinese nation's sense of community. We must rely closely on the concerted efforts of all the sons and daughters of the Chinese nation, uphold great unity and solidarity, and continue to consolidate and develop the broadest possible patriotic united front. In this way, we will pull together the ingenuity and strengths of the Chinese nation and enable all Chinese people, both at home and abroad, to unite as one in promoting the great cause of national rejuvenation. The past 110 years have shown us that to realize national rejuvenation, we need not only a stable and united domestic environment, but also a peaceful and stable international environment. Dr. Sun Yat-sen said, when China becomes strong and prosperous, we should not only restore the nation to its rightful position, but also assume greater responsibility in the world. Aggression and hegemony are not in the blood of the Chinese people. Our people hope to successfully realize national development, but they also hope to see all peoples of the world leading happy and peaceful lives. On the journey ahead, China will always fly the flag of peace, development, cooperation, and mutual benefit. Strive to promote the building of a human community with a shared future, and endeavor to improve the global governance system. We will promote the shared human values of peace, development, fairness, justice, democracy, and freedom. Work to strengthen solidarity with the peoples of all other countries, and engage in common efforts to oppose hegemony and power politics. China will always remain a champion of world peace, a contributor to global development, and a defender of the international order, and we will do our very best to make ever greater contributions to humanity. Comrades and friends, Dr. Sun Yat-sen once said, unification is the hope of all Chinese people. If China can be unified, all Chinese will enjoy a happy life. If it cannot, all will suffer. The Taiwan question arose out of the weakness and the chaos of our nation, and it will be resolved as national rejuvenation becomes a reality. This is determined by the general trend of Chinese history, but more importantly, it is the common will of all Chinese people. As Dr. Sun said, the tide of history is mighty. Those who follow it will prosper, while those who go against it will perish. National reunification by peaceful means best serves the interests of the Chinese nation as a whole, including our compatriots in Taiwan. We will adhere to the basic policies of a peaceful reunification and one country, two systems. Uphold the One China principle and the 1992 consensus, and work for the peaceful development of cross-strait relations. Compatriots on both sides of the Taiwan Strait should stand on the right side of history and join hands to achieve China's complete reunification and the reunification of the Chinese nation. The Chinese nation has an honorable tradition of opposing division and safeguarding unity. Secession amid at Taiwan independence is the greatest obstacle to national reunification and a grave danger to national reunification and rejuvenation. Those who forget their heritage, betray their motherland, and seek to split the country will come to no good, and they will be detained by the people and condemned by history. The Taiwan question is purely an internal matter for China, one which brooks no external interference. No one should underestimate the resolve, the will, and the ability of the Chinese people to defend our national sovereignty and territorial integrity. The complete reunification of our country will be and can be realized. Comrades and friends, since the advent of modern times, the Chinese people have created impressive achievements through arduous efforts and have come to embrace the brilliant prospects of national rejuvenation. For all Chinese people, achieving national rejuvenation is not only a shared honor, but also a shared mission. Dr. Sun Yat-sen said, "It is my sincere hope that every one of us will carry the responsibility of revitalizing China on our own shoulders." Here I would like to call on all the sons and the daughters of the Chinese nation at home and abroad to unite even more closely, to carry forward the great spirit of Dr. Sun Yat-sen and other pioneers of the Revolution of 1911, and to continue to forge ahead toward the rejuvenation of the Chinese nation.
Just now, General Secretary Xi Jinping delivered important remarks, speaking highly of the historical achievements and significance of the Revolution of 1911. He revealed how the CPC carried on the revolutionary cause of Dr. Sun Yat-sen, united and lead the Chinese people in the tireless struggle to achieve glorious progress. He has profoundly explained the historical enlightenment of the revolution and solemnly reaffirmed the One China policy 1992 consensus and the determination to curb the separatist activities behind Taiwan independence and safeguard national sovereignty and territorial integrity. General Secretary Xi Jinping's important remarks are far-sighted and profound in thoughts. They are encouraging and motivating. We must bear them in mind and act in accordance in an effort to form a majestic force to realize national rejuvenation. with all the sons and daughters of the Chinese people thinking as one mind and working for one cause. Comrades and friends, let us more closely rally around the CPC Central Committee with Comrade Xi Jinping at the core, hold high the banner of socialism with Chinese characteristics, and carry on the spirits of the Revolution of 1911. Let us forge ahead shoulder by shoulder of one heart and one mind, so as to vigorously march toward the second centenary goal of building a strong socialist modern country, and thus realizing the Chinese dream of complete reunification and the great rejuvenation of the Chinese nation. So this is the end of the commemoration of the 110th anniversary of the Revolution of 1911.
From inside the Great Hall of the People, Chinese President Xi Jinping delivered an important speech commemorating the 110th anniversary of the Revolution of 1911. This is CGTN special coverage of that commemoration. We'll continue our discussion about what was said in the speech by President Xi Jinping. I now joined in the studio by my guests here, Professor Wang Xingsong and current affairs commentator Einar Tangen. Einar, just before the speech, we were talking about commemorating the 100th anniversary of the founding of the CPC and today the 110th anniversary of the Revolution of 1911. And in that speech by President Xi, he talked about how Chinese communists were able to carry forward the legacy from the Revolution of 1911 and from, of course, Sun Yat-sen, who had aspirations for the great rejuvenation of the Chinese nation. Can you elaborate a little bit more of how that legacy was able to be carried forward by the communists in China?
Well, I was interested in the speech because he separated this revitalization to rejuvenation, and rejuvenation is what is kind of expresses this idea of how China has moved. Sun Yat-sen really was struggling to find a new way of expressing China, one that allowed the people under his three principles to enjoy, independence as a form of expression, speech, democracy, and also create a better welfare system for them and the country. So China, saying that is one thing, but when you start looking at the deficits that China had in terms of, illiteracy, poverty, clan systems, rivalries between it, even speech. Language was a huge issue. There were so many local languages. Everyone understood the same characters if they could read, but very, very few actually could speak to each other. And that means, cities that were perhaps 20, 30 miles away, they would use a third language for trade. So China had a lot of deficits. Sun Yat-sen was thinking more of following the Western path, getting creating a middle class and an industrialization, but it wasn't fitting for China. It was the Communist Party who came along and said, listen, this is a good idea, but it needs to be taken one step further. They were looking towards communism, socialism, particularly taking it one step further than just talking about democracy and revitalization. So today we heard Xi Jinping connect a lot of dots. He talked about the history, the role of the party, all right, the role of the people, and how that is all kind of fitting together with how China intends to go ahead. You heard a very, very, very strong statement at the end regarding Taiwan and how it's indispensable. It is vital and part of the rejuvenation of China. So there's going to be a lot of talk about this particular area. But as I said, back to your question, it was an interesting speech in that he connected all of these dots from the beginning and with Sun Yat-sen and the successful revolution 100 years ago to where the Communist Party is today.
Professor Wang, let's talk about finding the way here. Apparently finding the right way, the right path, the correct path, as indicated by President Xi, was absolutely vital to achieve the vision that Sun Yat-sen had with the revolution of 1911, and that path turned out to be socialism with Chinese characteristics. President Xi said that was the only correct way to realize a national rejuvenation. Let's talk about connecting the past, the present, and the future. How will China continue to walk on this way to further achieve rejuvenation?
Right. I think during President Xi's speech, one of the key words was the path, and the correct path is very important for China and for every country in the world to achieve national development. And I think the Great Revolution was successful in that it overthrew the imperial rule that lasted for 2,000 years. It also, pointed out a new pathway for China according to Dr. Sun Yat-sen's 3 principles of the people. However, Dr. Sun and his movement were not able to fulfill the entire cause. It was the Communist Party of China that continued to seek a better pathway, a more appropriate pathway for China's modernization. And President Xi Jinping mentioned in his speech that the October Revolution in Russia brought out the news that the Soviet Marxism-Leninism became successful in leading people against imperialism. And so China imported the foreign theories and philosophies. However, it doesn't mean that we just completely copied that into the Chinese reality, because the Chinese reality was very different from that in Russia and in other parts of the world. So it was the Communist Party of China which continued to seek and to try out different pathways. And eventually we found that we should base our ideology on Marxism-Leninism, but we definitely need to combine Marxism-Leninism with the Chinese reality. So Mao Zedong thought continued on the path of Marxism-Leninism to reform the Chinese reality. And based on the 3 decades of development after the founding of PRC, then the Communist Party continued to seek new ideologies, to reform the new ideologies. And so today, what we've got is the socialism with Chinese characteristics that we find is the most appropriate ideology that guides Chinese national development and the future national rejuvenation.
Professor Wang Einer, thank you so much. We do want to recap some of the remarks made by President Xi Jinping in that commemorative event just now. President Xi Jinping said the Communist Party of China will lead people to achieving the goal of national rejuvenation. Take a listen.
辛亥革命110年来的历史启示我们
The past 110 years have shown us that to realize national rejuvenation, the Chinese people must have a strong force to lead us forward, and that force is the Communist Party of China. The party was chosen to lead by history and by the people. Its leadership is very foundation and lifeblood of the party and the country, and it is the crux upon which the interests and the well-being of all Chinese people depend. Without the Communist Party of China, there would be no new China and no national rejuvenation.
Xi Jinping also said pursuing national reunification through peaceful means best serves the interests of the Chinese nation, and the issue of Taiwan is solely China's internal affairs, which prohibits interference from external forces.
以和平方式实现祖国统一
National reunification by peaceful means best serves the interests of the Chinese nation as a whole, including our compatriots in Taiwan. We will adhere to the basic policies of peaceful reunification and one country, two systems, uphold the one China principle and the 1992 consensus, and work for the peaceful development of cross-strait relations. Compatriots on both sides of the Taiwan Strait should stand on the right side of history and join hands to achieve China's complete reunification and the rejuvenation of the Chinese nation. The Taiwan question is purely an internal matter for China, one which brooks no external interference. No one should underestimate the resolve, the will, and the ability of the Chinese people to defend our national sovereignty and territorial integrity. The complete reunification of our country will be and can be realized.
For more on this, I do want to bring in Joanna Lei, who joins me now from the phone in Taipei. She's the current affairs commentator in Taiwan. Joanna, I do want to ask you a question about rejuvenation, which was a keyword that came up a lot in that speech by President Xi today. What do you think needs to be done to achieve the great rejuvenation of the Chinese nation?
I think it is amply clear that the 1911 revolution is the dawning of nationalism and nation building among Chinese public. Therefore, when we talked about rejuvenation, it is important to recount what Dr. Sun Yat-sen said in January 1st, 1912, when the Qing imperial government was brought down and the new republic was formed. He stated that China's goal was to achieve equal treatment, which means share equal responsibility with the international community and enjoy equal rights among other nations. Secondly, he stated that our goals are world peace, and the third is for China to gain due respect and to ultimately achieve universal harmony, which is 大同. So his declaration over 110 years ago, it's still today's worthy causes. So when we talked about China's rejuvenation, it's important to know what we are rejuvenating to. And I think equal rights, peace, and universal harmony are extremely worthy causes. And also, after the downfall of the last dynasty, after Double Ten's uprising, we were on the right track to achieve those hopes and dreams, but China was subject to endless wars and struggles. Now it is for the first time there are opportunities to achieve those hopes, and even during those 110 years, those hopes and dreams were never fading. And in my view, today's development in mainland China and the Belt and Road Initiative echoed what Dr. Sun Yat-sen said over 100 years ago, which is for China to shoulder equal responsibility and enjoy equal rights, to help bring in world peace, and for China to gain due respect and ultimately achieve universal harmony, not only for Chinese people, but for people within the ambiance of a general world, 大同.
Joanna, as always, we are grateful for your analysis and your insights. Thank you so much for making time for us today. And with that, we come to the end of this edition of our special coverage on the 1911 revolution. Here's a quick recap of some of the key moments at the commemoration of the 110th anniversary of the Revolution of 1911. I'm Zhong Shi in Beijing. My special thanks to all of my guests today, and we certainly appreciate your company on our special coverage today.